Started talking without the mic being on. Shalom. All right, we are back. All right, we are going to be continuing on with our look at the triennial tour portion. This week, we are going to be looking at Exodus chapter 13. We'll be looking at just the 1 through 20 this week. You deal with a few things that we see inside of this chapter. We want to kind of think about the idea of sanctification. When we look at this chapter, we see where the Most High sanctified the firstborn unto himself. We want to talk about that, the significance of the firstborn being sanctified, and also looking at the spiritual significance, and how these things all are able to point to Yeshua and help us to be able to understand who he is and his role towards us. So we want to just get started here. We're going to just go ahead and read from verse 1 to verse 20, and then we'll cut back and deal with the verses. So let me just pull up the verses here. Exodus 13, starting with the first verse there.
And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, Set apart to me all the firstborn, the one opening the womb among the children of Israel, among man and among beasts, it is mine. And Moshe said to the people, Remember this day in which you went out of Mizraim, out of the house of slavery, for by strength and the hand of Yahweh brought you out of this place, and whatever is leavened shall not be eaten. Today you are going out in the new moon Abib. And it shall be, when Yahweh brings you into the land of the Canaanites, and the Hittites, and the Amorites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites, which he swore to your fathers to give you, a land flowing with milk and honey, that you shall keep this service in this new moon. 7 days you eat unleavened bread, and on the seventh day is a festival to Yahweh. Unleavened bread is to be eaten the 7 days, and whatever is leavened is not to be seen with you. And leaven is not to be seen with you within all your border. And you shall inform your son in that day, saying, It is because of what Yahweh did for me when I came up from Mitzrayim. And it shall be as a sign to you on your hand, and as a reminder between your eyes, that the Torah of Yahweh is to be in your mouth with a strong hand. Yahweh has brought you out of Mitzrayim. And you shall guard this law at its appointed time from year to year. And it shall be, when Yahweh brings you into the land of the Canaanites, as he swore to you and your fathers, and gives it to you, that you should give over to Yahweh everyone opening the womb, and every firstborn that comes from your livestock. The males belong to Yahweh. But every firstborn of a donkey you are to ransom with a lamb. And if you do not ransom it, then you shall break its neck. And every firstborn of man among your sons you are to ransom. And it shall be, when your son asks you in time to come, saying, What is this? Then you shall say to him, By strength of hand Yahweh brought us out of Mitzrayim, out of the house of bondage. And it came to be, when Pharaoh was too hardened to let us go, that Yahweh killed every firstborn in the land of Mizraim, both of the firstborn of man and the firstborn of beasts. Therefore, I am slaughtering to Yahweh every male that opens the womb, but every firstborn of my sons I ransom. And it shall be as a sign on your hand and as frontlets between your eyelid, or the front of your eyes. For by strength of hand Yahweh brought us out of Mizraim. And it came to be when Pharaoh had let the people go that Elohim did not lead them by the way of the land of the Philistines, though that was near. For Elohim said, "Least this people regret when they see fighting and return to Mizraim." So Elohim led the people around by way of the wilderness to the sea of reeds, and the children of Israel went up in fives from the land of Mizraim. And Moshe took the bones of Joseph with him, and he certainly made the children of Israel swear, saying, Elohim shall certainly visit you, and you shall bring my bones from here with you. And they departed from Succoth and camped in Itham at the edge of the wilderness.
Okay, all right. Very good. Okay, so we want to go back here, look at a few things over here. If we go back, looking at, let's see here, let's see the second verse there, where it says, sanctify to me all the firstborn. Sanctify to me all the firstborn. So we want to talk about a little bit here this idea of what it is the Most High is requiring. First of all, we'll talk about the firstborn, but he's saying to set apart to me all the firstborn. What is he talking about over there? So let's look at this over here. Let's get out our tools. This scriptures version don't use the word sanctify, it says set apart, which kind of helps you to understand what that means. But if we let's see here, if we get out tools over here, let's see, this word sanctify is kadash. Kadash. Now, this word, really thinking about this, we always think about this word as like set apart or holy, right? The Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, right? This word really kind of is general, really, unless you attach it to something, right? Because the word literally means to be, to make, to pronounce, and to observe as clean. It could mean clean, but it really also could mean appointed, right? We're saying that it means clean because we are thinking about it in terms of being set apart to one that is clean. But when you think about what this word is really about being, like the scripture version says, set apart, appointed to something, dedicated to something, right? Prepared for something, proclaimed to something, right? So I can say that I am going to dedicate myself to Hasatan, right? I could be set apart towards wickedness, right? And so this word is qualified over here in the second verse where it says set apart to me, right? And then now we get an understanding what that would mean, because if we're being set apart or dedicated unto the Most High, who is holy, right? And then he said, then if since he's holy, he wants for his people also to be holy. That's in the Bible. Let's see where it says that at. Let's see. Uh, 1144. Let's look at real quick here. I just said it, but we want to just look it up because the scriptures is where I got it from, right? 1144. Let's see, what's that say on verse 44 right there?
For I am Yahweh your Elohim, and you shall set yourselves apart, and and you shall be set apart, for I am set apart. And do not defile yourselves with any swarming creature, the one creeping on the earth.
Okay, so he said, you shall be set apart, for I am set apart. You're going to be set apart because he's set apart, right? So if we're going to be connected to the Most High, the only way that we could be connected to him is if we are walking around like him, right? And so here, let's go back. We want to go back over here to where we was. So we want to just make that point clear that when we think about the idea of being set apart, you can be set apart really to anything, right? But what this verse is referring to is setting apart to me, to the Most High, right? Because when we look at this, it's interesting. When we look at this word over here, let's see if I can pull this up here. Here, let's see. Where is it? Oh, so here. If we look at this word, let's see here. Look at this word. It's interesting. We see this in the ancient over here. This says that this word means set apart, but then look at this over here.
Prostitute.
That's crazy, right? Because this word here, again, just has this idea of being set apart from the rest for a special function, right? To be set apart from the rest for a special function. Now over here, this is set apart for from the rest for a special function, but it's not holy, right? Right, but that word over there, that word kadashah, is prostitute, right? And so you can be set apart, but we want to talk about what you're set apart to. Let me grab my little whiteboard over there. We want to talk about these ancient letters. Let me write this down here. Okay, so we have over here for Kadash is, let's see here. Whoop, whoop. Dalet and a sheen. This looks like this. This. And like this. Okay, so we was to look at this, see what these word pictures is showing us when it talks about this word, because we just want to be careful not to think about Kadash, as meaning, it don't really mean holy, right? When we set ourselves apart to the Most High, we are set apart for holy purposes, right? But when we look at this, right? So you have the kuf, right? And so in the ancient, the kuf is the sun at the horizon. So when we see the sun, whereas at the horizon like this, you have a concentration of light. All the light is being concentrated and pulled together right in this one area, right? So you have this concentration that's coming together right in this one area. And then you have the dalit, which is the door flap, the tent flap, right? It signifies movement and going in and out, right? And then you also have the sheen, which is the two front teeth, which you bite with the two front teeth. It could be sharpness, it could be pressure, or tightness, right? And so if we have then this coming together, this concentration that's going through tightness, right? You have kind of this small space that's available for movement in and out. So you got all of this stuff, light coming together, this vastness that's coming together so that it could go in and out in tightness, right? And Kadash. And so when you think about it, it kind of makes you think about what it is that Yeshua was talking about whenever he said in wherever he said in Matthew chapter 7 and 13 and 14. What's that say? Oh, hold on, let me put it on the screen. What's that say over there? 13 and 14.
Enter in through the narrow gate, because the gate is wide and the way is broad that leads to destruction, and there are many who enter in through it. Because the gate is narrow and the way is hard pressed, which leads to life, and there are few who find it.
Okay, so again, when we think about Kadash, over here, again, we can think about the idea of taking something that's broad, right, and bringing it in and focusing it in and taking it to that place where, when you think about a tent flap, you kind of got to get tight. You kind of got to get tight to go through it, right? You're not just, at least my tent, I got to kind of like bend down, like I got to step up and bend down at the same time to get through it, right? I'm just not walking regular, right? I got to kind of move according to the way of the opening in order to get in there. I got to move according to the way of the opening, the way of the door. Yeshua said he's the door, right? So you got to move according to the door in order to get in. And that way that you got to move is with tightness, right? It's regimented. It's not loose, right? All over the place, right?
Effort.
It takes effort, right? Whenever you being tight, you kind of like thinking about it and kind of tensing up your situation. If you just hanging around and that's just loose, right? And so right, there's effort involved. There's intention that's connected to it, right? And so all of these things is what we think about when we think about the idea of Kadash, but Kadash unto Yahweh, Kadash unto the Most High, right? When we look at this verse over here, we just read over here, which says, the King James says the straight gate, but we're talking about the narrow gate, the narrow way, the narrow path, not the wide path, right? The wide path, that's what everybody's doing. All the people doing that, right? You know, probably everybody probably done seen that little picture of the people. It's like a whole bunch of people that's going down this path, and then there's like a little offshoot path with like one guy walking over there. Right, that one guy that's going over there, that's the straight path, that's the narrow path, that's the hard path, that's the path that it takes intention to go on. The other path is easy, that's the easy path. Everybody can do that easy. Everybody's doing it. There's no problem. Stuff that everybody's doing, I don't want that. That's everybody got that. I want that stuff that don't nobody got. I want some of that, that top secret stuff.
Right.
Right?
Exclusive.
That the exclusive. Once everybody got it, man, don't nobody want that. That's old. You know what I'm saying? I want that stuff that ain't nobody on that. That's what I want to be on, because that's the straight and narrow path, right? When we look at First Corinthians 6, 9 through 11. First Corinthians 6. What's that say there? 9 through 11. Oh, hold on, let me put this up on real quick. 6 down through 11.
Do you know not that the unrighteous shall not inherit the kingdom, or inherit the reign of Elohim? Do not be deceived. Neither those who whore, nor idolaters, nor adulterers, nor effeminate, nor homosexuals, nor thieves, nor greedy of gain, nor drunkards, nor revilers, nor swindlers shall inherit the reign of Elohim. And such were some of you, but you were washed, but you were set apart, but you were declared right in the name of the Master Yeshua, Yeshua, and by the Spirit of our Elohim.
Okay, very good. So we see over here when the apostle is speaking to these people over here, he's saying to them that all of these things over here that everybody's doing, by the way, there's all types of whores and idolaters and adulterers and effeminate ones and these homosexuals all over the place, right? Nowadays, look, these people's all over the place. This is what everybody doing. Just be free. What you gotta be with somebody dedicated to one person for? I could be dedicated to a whole bunch of people. I'm just free. You know what I'm saying? I don't gotta be tied down to just one person over here. Right? That's what everybody doing.
Yeah.
That's old fashioned. That's some old fashioned stuff. You want to sit up here and be with just dedicate yourself. I'm just want to just have whoever I want. Or I want to be whatever I want to be. Like, it don't matter that what body parts I got. I could just make up whatever I want to be, right? If I'm a man, I could be with men, and I could be a woman. Who said I'm a man?
Right. Exactly.
Right? But that's what this is. If I'm a man and I'm acting like a woman, that's this right here.
Yeah.
And so we got this thing that's going on, and we think that it's something that's new, but it ain't new. They've been doing it ever since way back here, and have been wrong since way back here too, right? And so he said over here, he said, "Look, these people shall not inherit the reign of Elohim." All these people over here that's doing these things, thieves, greedy of gain, drunkards, you just partying it up all the time.
Yep.
You just a reviler. Swindlers. You always got some scheme going on. You just be out here scheming.
Right.
Just tricking people, swindling people. He said, "You shall not inherit the kingdom of Elohim." But what we talking about over here, if you have been washed, if you've been cleansed by the Ruach HaKodesh, these things up here not your reality. They potentially could have been your reality prior, but he said, "And such were some of you, but you were washed, and you were set apart." Here's our word. This is the Greek, but it's the same context. It's set apart. "But you were declared right in the name of the Master Yeshua and by the Spirit of our Elohim." And so when we think about the idea of being set apart to the Most High, it got to do with holiness and righteousness and walking that narrow path that don't look like this over here with all these things. Because it's easy to do all of these things. Really, it is. It's really to be whorish. It's easy to find idols and worship them. Easy. It's easy to be an adulterer. To just say that you are dedicated to somebody and just go ahead and forsake that dedication and just do whatever you want with whoever. It's easy to do that. It takes strength and dedication and determination to not do these things, right? Because your body want to do it. Your body want to just look and see something and just want to go get it. Grab me a paper towel. Your body just want to do just whatever, right? But some of these things over here, it really takes effort, right, for you to actually do these things. Other things is just against nature, right? Some of these things on this list is just against nature, and this just gets into like the gross and profane, right? But I think at the end of the day, the thing that makes it the same is just not having any constraints and just really doing whatever you want, whether it's natural or unnatural, right? And so the Most High said he wants for you to actually have constraints, and he's the one that's going to give you those constraints, right? Because he's saying, "Sanctify to me," right? And again, we see this is a perfect example of what sanctified looks like, because he's saying all of these things over here, this is what you ain't doing if you sanctified unto the Most High. You walking in righteousness, right? You're not doing all of these things, thievery and greedy of gain. And you always sitting up here just trying to just just get these little schemes together and doing all of these things. That's wicked, is what he's saying over here.
Another thing I like to, not to cut you
Go ahead.
out, like to have people point out to people. It's like when you read this, like when you look at this stuff, this is about. I hear it say that the reign of Elohim. I think in the King James it says the kingdom, and that you should not inherit the kingdom. We're talking about, people call heaven or being taken from this world and going to the place where the king will rule.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like you gotta take the mindset, but you think this stuff he gonna allow this stuff where he rules at?
Yeah.
It's like you gotta be like, you think you're gonna be a swindler in the kingdom? That's not the kingdom, man.
Mm-mm.
If this stuff takes place in the kingdom, this wickedness, then it's not the kingdom.
Yeah.
And it's like, what make people think that you can be this way? You're gonna be transferred to that place.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to get to that place, so you gotta take all that stuff off that clearly would not be allowed there. What makes you think this stuff's gonna go on there?
Right.
You know what I
mean? Yeah, exactly. And so it's something that people really need to understand, is that, and we're going to talk about the context of what he is being spoken of in Exodus chapter 13, but we just want to get this out the way in terms of what it actually means to be sanctified unto me, dedicated unto me, unto the Most High. I say this all the time. Righteousness, sanctification looks like something. And so if you walking around and you looking like that, like what the world look like, then that's a problem. Because you just walking that wide gate, just like everybody else, right? The scriptures talk about us as being a peculiar people, right? And that's not necessarily strange, but it could be perceived that way by people who's on the outside. It's strange to them.
Yeah, because there's so many people not doing it.
Yeah.
So now it's a small group of people doing righteousness. That's weird, y'all.
Yeah. To them it's weird.
Yeah, to them.
Yeah.
Y'all ain't into homosexuality? No. No, we're not into that.
Yeah. No, we're not. And so we have to be able to make a separation and a distinction between those things that's holy and those things that are not. And so when we think about the idea of being connected to the Most High, sanctified unto the Most High, we also got to think about what that looks like and what it don't look like. Because we could be sitting up here saying that we sanctified to the Most High, but really we sanctified to all of these other things that's not the Most High. And the apostle over here, when we're looking at First Corinthians, is saying that this is this very well may have been a part of your past, but it shouldn't be part of your present. And so, we have to really take these things into consideration, right? Nobody's saying that you always was a perfect saint, right? But at some point, as a follower of the Most High, you had to have turned around from those things and began moving in the opposite direction of wickedness into the direction of righteousness. And if you didn't never do that, then that takes you out of the category of even being joined to the master. And so let's go back over here. Let's get back to Exodus, because that's where we at. Because we're talking about this idea of sanctification, right? Which is a very important component for us as followers of the Most High, right? Righteousness, holiness. And the only reason why we saying this righteousness and holiness, because when the Most High is holy, he's holy, and then so his followers also are holy, right? So let's keep on going over here. When we see over here, he says, sanctify unto me. I don't know if I found my cursor got lost. Let's see here. He says, sanctify unto me, set apart to me all the firstborn. All the firstborn he's talking about over here. And so let's look at that real quick here. Let's see here. Firstborn is this word here that says Bekor, firstborn, hence chief eldest, firstborn. Right? And so when we think about the firstborn, I think there's two ways really to think about a firstborn. And over here, this phrase here is also qualified, right? Because first we seen set apart, right? And we talked about the idea of set apart. You could be set apart to anything, but he's saying set apart to me, right? And so that set apartness is qualified by you talking about being dedicated, consecrated, sanctificated to the Most High. And then it says all the firstborn, the one opening the womb, right? Because when you think about the idea of firstborn, you could think about it from two perspectives. You could think about it, a firstborn in terms of inheritance is going to be the firstborn of the father in terms of inheritance, right? Because again, when we're thinking about these cultures back in the days, these cultures over here, they had at times they would have multiple wives, concubines, handmaidens who will potentially all have children for them, right? And so in terms of inheritance, we're talking about the firstborn, that would be the firstborn of the father, right? And so it's interesting that we see over when the way that Yaakov talks about Reuben, his firstborn, because he's giving you that idea of the fact that, you know, he let's see where that is, 49 verse 3, Genesis 49 verse 3. Can you read that for us, sir?
Reuben, you are my firstborn, my power and the beginning of my strength, the excellency of exaltation and the excellency of power.
Okay, right there with Reuben, that's speaking about the firstborn in terms of inheritance, in terms of where he says my power and the beginning of my strength. The first time that his seed was able to break through anything and be planted and grow and be born, right, was Reuben, right? And so typically in the family, that firstborn, you know, they receive that inherit that double portion, right? But over here now, what we're looking at over here, let me go back to Exodus 13. Now what we're looking at is different, right? Because it says the one opening the womb. And so if you had a family where you had multiple wives, then you could have multiple individuals that fit into this category right here, right? Because the womb, of course, is in the woman, right? And so the first one that breaks that the matrix, the coming out of the woman right over here, is what the Most High is referring to when he talks about the firstborn, all the firstborn, the one opening the womb among the children of Israel, among man and beast is mine. Right, so he's speaking about a special situation over here, where we're talking about the first one to come out of the woman's womb, all the woman, right? And so all of them are being dedicated, consecrated unto the Most High, man and beast. And so when we think about this, we kind of get we because of the fact that we've been kind of separated from the culture, we don't know anything about this, the ways, right? But when we think about the idea of these special privileges that were enjoyed by the firstborn, one thing that we think about with the idea of the firstborn was the fact that in the absence of the father, right, the father was to die, or if he, something happened where he became incapacitated or something like that, the firstborn, right, would kind of gain control of the family situation, right? He would take the place of the father. So if the father wasn't able to be there and lead and protect and control the situation, right? The firstborn was the one who came and kind of stepped in that role, right? And so think about now when we think about the fact that, first of all, that the Most High called Israel his firstborn, the nation, right? He called Israel, the nation, his firstborn. And so just like we think about from a cultural perspective where in the father's stead, the firstborn kind of is in that leading kind of a role, or acts as a representative of the father. The same could be said about Israel, right? To the nations in the world, right? And then the scriptures even talk about that, where the Most High says that Israel is a nation of kings and priests, right? Where meanwhile, when he said it, Israel didn't even have a king, or they didn't have no priests either at that time, right? And so he's giving you this imagery of a kind of a ruling, leading people over the nation, right? And again, when we think about this idea of being set apart unto the Most High, how is it that Israel would be leading or ruling over the nations? In righteousness, right? Showing them that narrow path taking the people away from this wide path and that everybody's doing and just living free and coming into the boundaries that are provided by the Almighty. But we're saying that from a cultural perspective, the firstborn, when the father wasn't there or able to do that, he did that, right? And so there was so we see what the Most High is doing over here is if he's going to take that firstborn and have that firstborn be dedicated unto him, it's almost as if you're making sure that that firstborn is prepared and ready and connected to the Most High, because he's going to get some serious responsibilities and things placed on him, right, in terms of his family. So he wants to be prepared and he wants to be connected to the Most High so that he's able to perform these duties that he will perform, right? So we see that the Most High is getting this kind of taken care of because he knows, the place of the firstborn in the family, right? So we could think about the first Israel being the firstborn. Then, of course, we could think about Yeshua, right? The only begotten son of the Most High, right? He would have that firstborn status where he is a representative of the Most High in his absence or stead, where he is the one that we look to in order to lead us and guide us and show us the way that we're supposed to go. Who beforehand was first dedicated unto the Most High, so that he will be ready and able to do the task that comes with this whole idea of being firstborn. Right? Okay, so again, when we think about this idea of this firstborn, there's a special significance, there's special duties that are given. Now, also, we could think about the fact that at this point over here, all of Egypt's firstborn was killed. Right. So if you think about what happened over there with Egypt, right? Their ruler, Pharaoh, who was like the father of Egypt, destroyed. Right? All of his power was removed, taken away. And then beyond that, with the slaughtering of the firstborn, you have the one who's supposed to come and take his place was destroyed too. Right? Egypt was just totally toppled. His father and anyone that was going to come and replace the father was just all destroyed. Totally toppled over there. They didn't have nobody to take their place. And then we see with Israel, now Israel is taken and lifting up and preparing now all of these firstborn and dedicating these to the victor, to the one, the destroyer, the one who came and conquered and reigned supreme over Pharaoh in Egypt, right? Preparing them to continue the walk of righteousness, right? By having this dedication. So when we look over and we see, it's interesting when we think about that final plague and what it did in Egypt, and then also again, how the Most High deals with Israel over here in terms of um you know, lifting up and kind of sanctifying the firstborn of um of Israel. Okay, we want to keep on going over there. Okay. All right. So let's look down here. We see over here in verse 3 where it says, we read verse 3, but we want to talk about this part over here, right? So he's saying unto Moses, remember this day, the day of deliverance, right? The day they came out, that first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, that they came out of there, Abib 15. He said, by strength of hand, Yahweh brought you out of this place. By strength of hand. So let's see here. We look here, verse 3. Kozek. Power, strength. Right? When we think about it actually says strength of hand, so that would be kozek and also yad. Let's see if that is here. Strength of hand, yad. It's this hand, right? So if we just was to think about this, really, the hand is giving you, the hand really gives you the idea of strength anyway, because you do all of your stuff with your hands, right? And so when you think about the hand, now if you're talking about the strength of hand, that's really just giving you it's just really intensifying the thought over there. But if we look at the yod, which is the hand, the yod actually is the arm and the hand, right? The yod, which is a yod and a dalet, and then in the ancient is this hand and the arm and the hand and the tent peg. I mean the tent door flap. And so whenever you going to open the door anyway, that's how you do it, right? You go in there and you reach your hand and arm to move that door flap out of the way, right? The strength of your hand, the work that your hand provides is giving you the strength and power to even make the movement, to move in and out. And so when we think about the strength of hand that the Most High used in order to get Israel out of Egypt, he showed you his hand, he showed you his power, he showed you his strength when he toppled all of the gods of Egypt and Pharaoh. But also, when we think about the strength of hand that brought you out of this place, for me, I think about Yeshua. I think about Yeshua when I think about the strength of hand, because when we look at the scriptures in Isaiah, it kind of refers to Yeshua as the arm of Yahweh. Um, 52:10. What does it say in Isaiah 52? Let's see here. What's this say right here? Verse 10.
It says, Yahweh shall lay bare his set apart arm in the eyes of all the nations, and all the ends of the earth shall see the deliverance of our Elohim.
Okay, so when the Most High shows you his arm, when he shows you his holy arm, the nations are going to see the deliverance of Elohim. To me, that helps me to understand that the deliverance of Elohim somehow it is connected to, or actually is, the arm of Elohim. But I already know that the deliverance of Elohim actually is Yeshua. He is the salvation of Yahweh. That's his actual name, right? Deliverer of Elohim, the salvation of Yahweh, actually is Yeshua.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we look over here, and this is talking about the idea of the Most High showing you his muscle, he's making his arm bare. He's pulling up his sleeve. And sure, I don't really got no muscles to show you, right? But that's what he's doing. He's pulling up his sleeve, right? And he's showing you his muscle. But who's his muscle? The way in which he interacts with humans, which is Yeshua. That's how he deals with us. The way that we see the Most High is through him. And so if he's showing you his arm, if he's showing you his muscle, he's showing you Yeshua. Right? And so the same way that the Most High showed his muscle to Egypt, the Most High gonna show his muscle to all the nations through Yeshua, and everybody gonna know who he is. Just like we look in the times of old, where because of what had happened with Israel and Egypt, you know, that became the claim to fame for the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He is and was the one who delivered Israel from Egypt, right? That was him laying bare his holy arm in the eyes of Egypt. But then when that word went forth, right, it was going also to the nations. And so when we think about, again, what we see when we look at, if we go back to Exodus in chapter 13, when we think about the idea of this holy arm of Yahweh, or where it says over here, for by strength of hand Yahweh brought you out. You know, this is the same that we enjoy with our individual salvation, as we're brought out of the world and brought to the Most High, dedicated unto him. And then look at the connection, right? And whatever is leavened shall not be eaten. And so now there's a connection now between the idea of being taken out, brought out with a strong hand, and this idea of leaving the leaven behind. And so when we think about Passover, when we think about Feast of Unleavened Bread, and we think about the significance of leaven, meaning, giving you that idea of meaning things that cause you to be puffed up and swell up, or sin, right? We think about the connection between the idea of being brought out from slavery, brought out from the clutches of Pharaoh, brought out from death into life, and whatever is leavened shall not be eaten, and leaving that leaven behind, right? And so again, when we think about the idea of sanctification, right? Again, we see with the Passover and with Feast of Unleavened Bread how it shows you this thing where the Most High chose his people. And then he also chose a path for them to walk on and go, this peculiar path, this special path that didn't include those things which puff up or cause one to swell or sin, right? And so we have to always remember that, as Israel, we are a set apart for holy purposes nation, right? You can't even just say a set apart nation. You got to say a set apart for holy purposes nation, right? Because all peoples could be set apart, right? But we're talking about set apart for holy purposes nation. And then we even see a connection between the setting apart of the nation and the removing and abstaining from leaven, because that's the first feast that we see there, right? The feast that's connected to the idea of being redeemed back to the Father and rescued from the evil taskmaster and bound to our new master, as well as this transition that's kind of exemplified through Feast of Unleavened Bread, with the removal of leaven and the abstinence of it, right? So that removal of sin and the abstinence of sin, the continual abstinence of sin, right? Even though we know that Feast of Unleavened Bread is a 7-day period, is giving you this 7-day period is kind of exemplifying for you this completion of a cycle, right? So it's giving you a picture of how your life is to be, right? Unleavened. And so when we look at these verses over here, the Most High, through Moses, is calling for the people to remember this stuff, right? He's calling for the people to remember this day that the Most High got you out, and the Most High separated you from this thing that exemplifies sin, and also connected you to this life of sinlessness. He said, remember this stuff, right? Remember, what is that? It's a car, probably. Let's see what it is. Get my cursor over there. Zakar, right? To mark, so as to be so as to be recognized. You make this thing be something that you're able to know when you see it. Remember it, right? Mention. Be mindful of this thing, right? Record this thing in the recesses of your mind, and don't let it come out, right? And then he recalls it, right? Today you going out. He says what it was, right? In the new moon, Abib. And then we go down to verse 6. He talks about the 7 days of unleavened bread. Is baby in here? Um. Okay, so we see the 7 days of unleavened bread again, helping us to remember this, all of the things that go along with this thing that was our deliverance, this thing that was, when and how we came out. And so we can't think about this feast of unleavened bread that, it is directly connected to the day of deliverance without thinking about the thing that it represents, which is, again, this connection to the removal of and the abstinence of leaven, which is a picture of sin. Which, again, when we think about it, when we say all of that, it's the same thing as saying being sanctified unto the Most High. Because if we're sanctified from the Most High, we are removing and abstaining from those things which are sin or cause us to sin. Right? It's the perfect picture. And then again, it is showing us and helping us to see this in the most perfect way, because it's directly connected to the deliverance from Egypt, right? Which is a perfect picture of our deliverance from the flesh, our deliverance from our carnal mind, our deliverance from all of our appetites that we used to give into, right? Like what we looked at earlier in 1 Corinthians. Okay, so when we look at this here, let's drop down to verse 9. Can you read verse 9 again for us there?
It says, and it shall be as a sign to you and on your hand as a reminder between your eyes of the Torah of Yahweh is to be in your mouth. For with a strong hand Yahweh has brought you out of Mizraim.
Okay, so when we look at this, when you look at this, you could look at this. I think we're supposed to look at this two ways. When you look at a lot of what some of these commentators say, they like to kind of say that this is only figurative and is not literal, or nobody was putting anything on their hand, their literal hand, or on their literal forehead. But when we look at this, I feel like it's giving you, when we look at scripture in general, it's giving you this physical thing to help you to remember this spiritual thing. And so I'm not going to sit up here and act like in this particular case, we're not able to look at this from a literal perspective as well as what is trying to show you from a spiritual perspective. We're talking about the idea of remembering these things in the first place. So what better way to remember something is actually tie something to your hand and put something on your forehead. Not only are you gonna remember it, when somebody looks at you, they're gonna remember it too. What's that you got on your forehead? Oh wait, oh what's that? Something? What you got? Some Torah scrolls or something on your forehead or something? What is that? What's that on your hand? What is that? What you got on there? What is that? Some kind of Torah scrolls on your hand? What you doing with that? Right. So I'm saying that he's giving you this physical thing that you might do. That I think that he probably had the people do. When you look back, at least when you look back at the Israel in the time of the Pharisees, they literally was tying scriptures to their head and to their hands. Now I don't know how far before that they was doing it, but at that time they was taking these scriptures literally, and they was literally putting scriptures on their hands and heads. But the spiritual significance, what? Again, we think about the hand, the thing that you do work with, the thing that you exemplify or manifest your strength with, you're attaching to that thing that's causing you to remember the power of the Most High. So you're not doing no work without remembering the fact that the Most High actually gave you the ability to be able to work in the first place. Right there, you're making there be a connection between the things that you're able to do and the one who gave you the ability to do it. And the same thing could be said with the idea of having this reminder between your eyes, right? He could literally be talking about this thing that you're putting like on a headband or something that causes you to remember the Most High and His strength and His power. And I think also from a figurative perspective, having the Most High in your mind, in your thoughts at all times, remembering that He brought you out. And then if you're remembering that He brought you out at all times, you're also remembering how to stay on that narrow path, because He's the one that put you there in the first place. You don't never got to sit around and think about, man, how did I even get here? You don't got to think about it, because you're remembering the fact that the Most High, through His strong arm, brought you out in the first place. And you're continually remembering it because it's between your eyes and it's on your hand. Right? It's the same thing that we look at when we see over here in it's the same thing we think about when we look at let's see here. When we look at Deuteronomy, start reading Deuteronomy 6 with the 5th verse right there.
It says, you shall love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart and with all your being and with all your might. And these words which I am commanding you today shall be in your hearts. It says that you shall impress them upon your children and shall speak of them when you sit in your house and when you walk by the way and when you lie down and when you rise up. And I shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be in the frontlets between your eyes. And you shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates.
Okay, so when we think about these verses over here, it's really kind of like an application of what we saw over there in Exodus. When we think about the idea of you just forever always talking about the Most High and His goodness and what He has done. If I am loving Yahweh with all my heart and all my being and all my might, I'm not forgetting Him or what He's done for me. I'm always remembering what he did, and what he's done and what he is getting ready to do. Right? And I got all of that stuff down, way down deep in my heart. So much so that it ain't just down deep in there, it's coming out. And I'm talking about it. I'm telling these little kids about it so that they could grow up and tell their kids about it. And so on and so forth. And then not only am I talking to them about it, but I got this stuff written on me. I got little headbands and little trinkets and stuff that I got with the Most High's name on it, so you can look around and see. It's on my doorpost. You look every time you look around, you see something that causes you to think about the Most High and His power and what He's done for you, right? So when we think about this idea of remembering, right, what He told Israel to do as a not like you could easily forget something like what they had just experienced. Well, you would think that you wouldn't be able to forget, the things that they had just experienced, because it was some pretty fantastical things that they had experienced. But in the event that they did somehow forget, he's saying, remember, right? Have these things in the front of your mind as a sign to you on your hand and as a reminder on your forehead. And not only that, but have the law of Yahweh be in your mouth. That He rescued you with a strong arm. And so again, we're thinking about that from a spiritual perspective. Again, we're talking about Yeshua, right? We're talking about the fact that the only reason why I am who I am is because of the fact that Yeshua came and lived and died and rose from the dead and sent me as Ruach HaKodesh so that I could walk in His ways. Right? The only reason why I am who I am is because the Most High, with His strong arm, came and brought me out of my Egypt. And I'm supposed to remember that, and I'm supposed to be telling people about it. It's supposed to be in my mouth, that what He did for me. Right? And again, that's all connected to this whole idea of sanctification, this process of righteousness, this process of walking and growing in righteousness, this process of walking out my dedication to the Most High. Right? Because when we look back over here, He's giving you this thing that He literally did in terms of sanctifying the firstborn. He's giving you this thing that He literally called for Israel to do in terms of sanctifying the firstborn. But when we think about Israel in relation to the nations, we're the firstborn. And so we belong to the Most High. Right? And it's a responsibility of the firstborn to represent the Father in His absence. Right? Yeshua gives us that example, right, of representing the Father in the absence of the Father. Right? Yeshua said to His disciples, if you seen me, you seen the Father. He was a representative of the Father. Right? And so we're representatives of Yeshua, who was a representative of the Father. Right? We step into that role of the firstborn as Israel, as it relates to the nations of those ones who step in and represent for the Father. Right? That's what Yeshua did for us. And so in turn, then that's what we do for the nation, the rest of the nation of Israel, first of all, and then the nations, outside of Israel. Right? Because you got a whole group of people out here who don't even know that they're supposed to be dedicated to the Most High. Right? You got a whole group of people out here who don't recognize that they actually supposed to be dedicated to the Most High. Like that's like literally their purpose and position in this world. And then meanwhile, they out here in following the crowd. Right? When they're supposed to be stepping away from the crowd and moving in the other direction, going the other way. Look, verse 10 said, you shall guard this law. You're supposed to keep this law. But what's the law? The law is remembering that the Most High rescued you. Right? When we think about from at its appointed time from year to year, and we think about Feast of Unleavened Bread, we always think about, Feast of Unleavened Bread and matzah and getting the sin out and all these things, right? But when we think about the original, when he was telling them to remember the deliverance and him, rescuing them with a strong hand, we have to also remember that part of the situation too, where, part of the thing that we remember and rehearse and zakar is our personal deliverance. What is the Most High brought us through? Because that can help people, to be delivered themselves. They sit up here and look at you. I had, the people up at, the people up when I was going through the penitentiary, people up there, they saying, well, if people only seeing you from one perspective and don't really know what your background is, don't know where you came from, right? Don't know what your kind of situation is. It's easier for people to be able to accept things from you when they understand that you're just like them. Right. And then sometimes they could look at somebody where they are and there could be kind of like a little disconnect because there's no similarities. But the only difference is that with a strong arm, the Most High rescued me. Right? He rescued me already, right? He rescued me. So it's bearing witness that that he, has this power to change and to cause his people to actually grow and change and transform. Right? So it can be helpful for people to actually know what you used to be. right? Because then now they can identify, like, wow, if he did that for you, he should be able to do it for me then, right? Um, and so,
But also too that builds their faith because you got to have faith that it can happen too.
yeah, yeah,
A lot of people won't believe, like they don't believe they can change. They don't believe that the Most High can make it happen for them. So they're lacking faith.
yeah,
So if you having that testimony, it's like, well, now I believe. I believe that he can do it. That builds their faith. So now they can actually walk and be
yeah,
like, make that change.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And so again, what we're talking about really is these things, these kind of these identifiers that's causing you to be able to remember what it is that the Most High did, to put the focus on Him, right? Because that's what he's really talking about. You remember how you got here. Remember what I did for you, and how I got you here, how I brought you here. Remember that. And it seems that that's really supposed to be a means of strengthening the people. If those people could only just remember what it is that the Most High did for them as they're walking, maybe that helps them to stay focused. If they could look at their arm and see this little thing that they had tied on themselves, right? Or they could just have this reminder that causes them to recite the words, the law of the Most High. If they could just have this identifier, this thing that caused them to have this law in their mouths. And remember their purpose, which is a dedication unto Yahweh. We we live in this world where we have to have so much interaction with the world. We have to be able to, in the midst of all of this interaction that we must have with the world, we have to be able to have some of these things over here that we see in this 13th chapter of Exodus be manifest in our lives even today, right? Where we're able to, in the midst of this gross iniquity that's all around us, be able to have the words of Yahweh in our mouth, right? To be in the midst of all of this gross iniquity that we have all around us, to be able to think about how it is that the Most High brought us out from slavery in the house of bondage, right? So that we're able to walk and be the firstborn that He called for us to be, right? Okay, let's keep on looking at this now. A couple more things we want to see over here. Okay, so if we go down, let me see here. If we go down over to, I thought this was interesting over here in verse 12. We're talking about giving over to Yahweh, everyone who opened the womb, the firstborn. He says of the livestock, right? Of the livestock, the males belong to Yahweh. And then look, every firstborn of a donkey, you are to ransom with a lamb. And if you do not ransom it, then break his neck. Okay, so let's think about this, right? So you got this donkey, right? Even the firstborn of the donkey, he said to take the donkey and then ransom the donkey for the lamb. So you wasn't sacrificing or dedicating no donkey to the Most High. Donkey is not on the list. But he didn't want to not think about the donkey, and he still wanted them to be dedicated unto the Most High, even though he was a donkey. So he said, redeem the donkey for a lamb. So you got this replacement, which is the lamb for the donkey. Not to say that he didn't want the donkey, but he wasn't trying. He wasn't trying to take the donkey, right? He wasn't trying to take the donkey. So instead of taking the donkey, even though he acknowledged the donkey, there needed to be a lamb instead of the donkey. But if you don't ransom it, then it's not good for nothing. Think about that. He already said that all the firstborns is his. The ones that's not necessarily acceptable, even though they firstborn, he gonna take something that he's going to accept on your behalf. But if you don't allow for that exception to be made, then you're good for nothing. He said, if you do not ransom it, then you break his neck. It's worthless. Think about that. If you never got to the place where you've dedicated yourself to the Most High, then you're worthless, basically. You have no worth outside of being connected to the Most High. He wants for you to return. He wants for you to be connected to him, even the donkey. But he don't want the donkey like that. He wants something instead that's to come instead for the donkey, which is the lamb. Right? So he made provisions for the donkey to have a ransom, a redemption, which was the lamb. It was for the donkey, right? It was instead of the donkey. But if that ransom don't take place, then the donkey get his neck broke. It's not good for nothing without it. As the firstborn, what are you good for if you're not connected to the Most High? It seems like you good for nothing.
Right with you sure? He's like the lamb. I'm like, we the donkey. Firstborn, we the donkey. But if we ain't ransom with the lamb, if we ain't being tied to him, then we ain't good for it. That's it.
Break his neck.
Yeah.
He's not good for anything. But a donkey's good for stuff. You could put all kinds of things on a donkey. It could carry stuff all over the place. You got this perfectly good animal that could do all kinds of work. But if you don't put that animal in its place and do the things that's necessary connect that firstborn back to the one who said all the firstborn is mine. If you don't do that, then it's good for nothing. You know, we have to be able to get to the place of understanding that, you know, we have a purpose. You know, people sit up here and they search all over the place and try to find, what's my purpose? What am I here for? Like, why am I here? Let me help you. It's general, but it's a great start. You need to be connected to the creator. You need to be connected to the one that made you. And then go from there. If you ain't never did that, you just like that donkey that ain't never been ransomed. And you might as well just get your neck broke. Because he wants for the firstborn to be sanctified unto him. Right? Israel is his firstborn. We got people walking around out here who is supposed to be connected to the Most High. But they're not. They're not walking in a divine purpose, which is to be sanctified to the Most High. But just like in Exodus 13 and 13, you know, that person is worthless. And we see when we look at Yeshua and his words, Yeshua, if we're not connected to Yeshua, if we've never been redeemed by the blood of Yeshua, right? If when that time comes, that time of judgment happens, and we can't be connected to and associated with Yeshua, there's a place that wasn't made for us. There's a place that wasn't made for us where we're gonna end up if we are not connected to Yeshua. Right? There was a place that was created for Satan and his demons and devils. It was created for him. But if you connect yourself and liken yourself unto him, guess what? That's where you end up. But it's the same concept over here we see in this verse over here, where he made a place for the donkey. But if you don't do what's necessary for the redemption of that donkey, then the donkey get dead. Right? The one that is unredeemed is good for nothing. If you've never replaced your old master with a new one, who, by the way, is the master, the real master of the universe, not like He-Man. Right? If you've never replaced your master with the real master of the universe, then that means that you're unredeemed and good for nothing. And so we need to be able to recognize that the Most High has made provision. He has made provision to stop looking at us as if we're just this little beast of burden, this donkey, where he wants to look at us like we're just little cute little lamb thing with these little cute little eyes just like the little Serta, the little bed advertisements. They got the little lamb with the little big cute eyes. That's how he wants to look at us, right? He's able to even just not even think about us in terms of our old self. He's not. He can't even remember that we used to be donkeys on purpose. Like he forgets. He forgets about our former self on purpose, right? He said he put our sins as far, our sins will be far away from him as the east is from the west. That's farther than the mug because they're complete opposites.
Right.
He forgets on purpose. He can see everything. He knows everything. But he'll take your former self and put it in the sea of forgetfulness if you just accept the thing that he made for you, which is this ransom that he created. It's easy. It's easy. He set the whole thing up. You don't even gotta think about it. You don't gotta figure nothing out. He made all the provisions. All you gotta do is just sit up here and just do the things. Right? But that's what he wants. He wants for his firstborn, Israel, to be sanctified unto him. Sanctify to me the firstborn, he said, of man and beast. Okay. All right, let's keep on going over here. All right, so let's see here. If we go down, I think the last thing I want to look at is okay. Let's go down to where we ended up at 19. Read for us verse 19 again.
Says that Moshe took the bones of Joseph with him, for he certainly made the children of Israel swear, saying, Elohim, certainly, I shall certainly visit you, and shall bring my bones from here with you, and you shall bring my bones from here with you.
Okay, very good. So when we look over here at this, it's kind of a simple thing on the surface. We look at the fact that Joseph did not want for his bones to be left back in Egypt. He knew that they were going to be leaving from there, and just like his forefathers from before him, when they died, they had their burial grounds in the land, in the promised land. And so he didn't want for his bones to be left over there in this land that was not promised to them. Right? Simple as that. You look at that and you see straightforward. It's about having his bones not be over there in this defiled land. But then also, when you think about this, of course, you could think about this from a spiritual perspective. What type of spiritual significances can we place in this idea of, the carrying out of Joseph's bones out from Egypt, right? And we know that, of course, back if we look at let's go back. If you look at Genesis 50 and verse 20, let's see, the last two verses. Let's read 25 and 26.
It says, "And Joseph made the children of Israel swear, saying, Elohim shall certainly visit you, and you shall bring up my bones from here. And Joseph died, being 110 years old, and they embalmed him, and he was placed in a coffin in Mitzrayim."
Okay, so we see over here that it was important for Joseph, and it was important to Joseph that his bones be removed from Egypt, when they left out of there. And so when you think about this now, we see what we're looking at, verse 19. Um, bones, when you think about bones are really the strength of your body, right? You have this body, but if you didn't have any bones, it wouldn't have any shape to it. You just will kind of just be like like a blob, right? Everything's like your muscles even is attached to your bones, right? You got to have this hard thing for your muscles to be able to be attached to so that they could be even strong, right? So you have this thing that kind of gives you this, it kind of has this representation of, your essence, your physical foundation, is your is your bones. And so when we think about this, especially with Joseph, who, when we look back, really was the perfect picture of, gave us a perfect picture of Yeshua, um, in that we see where he was a type of deliverer for his brothers, Israel. We see where he was, that deliverer for his brothers, just as Yeshua is a deliverer for us. We see the various things where we see where his brothers, they rose up against him, plotted to kill him. He was buried in a pit for a time. All these things, all these connections back to um, Yeshua we see in Joseph. And then so when we think about this idea of him wanting for uh, Israel to carry his bones out, to carry out his essence, to carry out his strength and shape and foundation. Um, for me, it causes me kind of to think about, like, when I think about the essence of Joseph, when I think about the strength or the shape or foundation of Joseph, I think about what it is that he represents. And, again, what he represents is Yeshua. Um, and so when we think about now, again, the fact that we're the Most High saying for Israel to remember that they were rescued, delivered with a strong arm, right? Which, we think of as Yeshua. And then also now we had this other component of them taking out the bones of Joseph, which, again, is giving you this idea of thinking about what it is that Joseph represents in his essence, his foundation, is also Yeshua, right? So they're remembering that they were delivered by Yeshua, and they're carrying with them the idea the idea of Yeshua, the fact that they're the brother that they killed and that was hidden from them was later revealed, as their redeemer, right? All of these things that we think about when we think about Joseph, the best things about Joseph all cause us to think about Yeshua. And so I just think that it's interesting that we have these little things that we're able to see that are kind of beneath the surface that all cause us to think about and look towards Yeshua and what it is that he's done for us and is doing or can be doing in us and through us. Um, when we think about Joseph in terms of the idea of his name, being he will add. Um, it's interesting, even when we look at Israel coming out was added to, right? Because it came out with this mixed multitude, right? So Israel coming out was added to. When we think about the idea of Israel lost, right? Israel lost. Israel has been, cast out and dispersed all across this world, but because of the thing that Yeshua has done for us, we can also witness Israel being added to by Israel, right? As Israel is actually restored and grows through the power of the Ruach HaKodesh. So again, when we look at the idea of part of the Exodus, including the carrying out of the bones of Joseph, again, it causes you to think about all of these other layers and things where, all of them, get you to kind of the manifestation of the new covenant, right? If we would just only look deeper into the scriptures as Yeshua called for us to do, right? Again, say this all the time. If we see in Luke where he tells his disciples and he shows his disciple himself in the Torah, when we're not able to literally find Yeshua in the Torah from a literal perspective, then that's saying that he's showing them himself from a spiritual perspective, right? And so he's not just literally looking at what it's literally saying, but he's looking at what the scripture is hinting to and pointing to, and bringing out the fact that he is the object upon which the scripture points to, all of the scriptures, right? And so this must be something that we do when we look in the scriptures, right? And so, we want to just kind of close down by just thinking about this idea and trying to make this idea of being sanctified unto the Most High something that is, real in our everyday lives, right? We have to be able to always be strong representatives of the one who owns us, right? The one who is our master, Yeshua HaMashiach, right? we have to remember that this idea of being sanctified is about holiness. It's about righteousness. It's about walking in this on this narrow road that don't look nothing like that wide road that's over there that got all the people on it. Right? This is a straight and narrow road that leads to life everlasting, right? As opposed to that wide road that everyone's on that leads to the pit of hell, right? And so we have to understand and let it be forever in our remembrance and between our eyes that Yeshua has redeemed us and has called for us to walk in righteousness and forever remember all that he's done and is doing for us, and to continue to walk in that remembrance. Because again, walking in the remembrance actually helps us to walk in righteousness, right? When we're able to remember and forever remember what he did for us, it helps us to walk in righteousness, right? Okay. Does anybody have any thoughts or anything to add to that at all? Okay. So, that being said, that's the case. We're going to go ahead and be done for right now. Y'all willing, we will be back next week with more of the Torah portion. We ask that everybody out there have a blessed week, and we'll say Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
To you all.